Hey there. Welcome to the Classical Liberal Project. My name is Danielle. I'm here with Jonathan Casey, uh,
Hello, hello.
chair of the Classical Liberal Caucus. Jonathan, what have you been up to lately? What have you been working on
Well, we've
there
got a
in Texas?
few. Yeah, we've got a few projects in the works. It feels empty today. It feels like it's just us two, which is kind of
Yeah.
weird. This is our first one, just us.
Well, I
Um,
texted you. I said, "What's the point of having a podcast if you're not interesting enough by yourself?" So,
I know, I know. Exactly. So, no. So the past couple weeks, we've got a few things working on. We're working on some candidate training for later in the summer. We'll have some more details about that. We've also got we're working on a project, kind of looking at the Libertarian Party financial records and figuring out, okay, what are the trends, what are the membership trends, so we can have, nobody. One of the downfalls of having a political party where people kind of cycle in and out pretty quickly is you don't have much institutional knowledge. You don't know
Mhm.
how things were done in the past. You don't know how well things went in the past or how badly things went in the past, right? So I think what we can do as a caucus is kind of look at the numbers and say, okay, these are the numbers where we should be at. These are good numbers. These are bad numbers, and kind of provide a sense of where the party, the health of the party. So we've got a team working on that. We've got a few other projects in the works. And like I mentioned before, it's just us two. Joshua Eagle and I are going to be kind of. We've got a project coming out that we're going to kind of branch off from the CLC in this podcast. I'm really excited. We're not quite ready to announce all of that, but we think we're going to try to bridge that gap between. We're trying to reach all the classical liberals in the Republican and Democratic parties and try to bring them in. That's going to be our kind of our mission, because I think the term classical liberal applies to a lot of people. In fact, I would, you've got your progressives, you've got your conservatives, but there's some overlap with classical liberals there. But I think a lot of Americans in the middle between those two groups are very classically liberal minded. So I think the Libertarian Party has not done a good job of reaching out to those people. So I think that's where we would like to put a lot of time and effort and focus into bringing, reaching those people and bringing them into the libertarian circle, even if we don't call it libertarian circle, the liberty movement, whatever you want to call it. I don't care what you call yourself, as long as you're here, fighting the omnipotent state.
Yeah, I love it. And over here on our side, I have a lot of people that I want to talk to more there. You guys are going to do more like philosophical and talking to like bigger, like more national, federal types of issues, right?
Right.
And what I'm really interested in is you guys. I want to know what kind of activism you're doing. I want to know what candidates you support. I want to know what organizations you're working with wherever you are who are promoting classical liberal ideas. Um, I've also thrown around the idea of a book club. One of our board members, Deirdre, how do you say it, McCloskey?
McCloskey, I believe. Yeah.
She wrote a book, and I think that would be a really good one to read because then we could interview her afterwards. But I'm not going to read a
Speaking of
book by
Deirdre,
myself.
did
So.
you did you see the Brad Palumbo debate 3 nights
Oh,
ago?
I did not.
That was really interesting. So Deidre was originally slated to do that debate with Michael Knowles. She backed out. I don't know. My assumption is that it's health related, because I know that she was going to
Mm,
have knee replacement like a day or two after
mm.
the debate, which seems like I mean, I know she's late 80s, and I mean her accomplishments are pretty wild. So I can imagine that she was going to try it, but so she ended up backing out for, and I don't know exactly why, but Brad Palumbo stepped in to debate Michael Knowles about the transgender issue, because he said a few months ago that transgenderism should be wiped out, should be eradicated, and and so that statement obviously caused a lot of backlash to it, and there was a lot of back and forth on the interwebs about it. And Brad did a really good job. There's a few points in the debate where Michael Knowles really just shows that he's trying to defend it as if there's this truth that society can reach to, that we can force on each other, this that we can enforce laws based on some truth that the majority can find somehow, which is completely counter to our philosophy of the only time that force is required or should be used is in direct defense of another person or their rights.
Mhm.
So that very philosophy is just is such, we talked about classical liberals being conservatives, but that type of conservatism is quite the opposite. It's very authoritarian, very top down, very
Yeah.
much to control every little aspect of your life. That is not small government, classic conservatism of our grandparents.
Yeah, I don't I don't understand how that tracks for people, but, that's fine. It
I understand. I grew up in a very conservative home, and so I understand why people are worried about moral
Right.
degeneracy or things along these nature. But there, show me where your government has actually made it better. Show me, like,
Mhm.
even ignoring that, I think it's morally wrong to force somebody to do things, or force somebody to not do what they want to do as long as it's not harming someone else. So, ignoring that, you're still never going to achieve the results. The results of trying to force people to live the way you want them to will always be worse than whatever the results of them living the way that they want to
Well, and
will
what
will
did
be.
what did COVID tell us? Like, there are always
Right.
gonna be people who are gonna break the rules, like,
Yeah.
you
Exactly.
know
And Brad actually made that almost that exact same point. He talked about medical, because Michael Knowles believes that the government should ban all transgender surgeries
Mm.
for every age, whatever.
Now
And
now
so
does transgender services sorry, does that mean gender affirming care? Is that the same thing?
I believe to them, yes, it's all
Okay.
it's all in the same boat. So any kind of affirming care, any kind of even therapy for, like in Texas, we had CPS was investigating parents simply for taking their child to a therapist.
Mm.
Like, that's a problem, guy. Like, no, I don't care what you believe, that's wrong on every possible level. Um, but Brad made the point that about how conservatives were very strong on medical autonomy, on maybe allowing people to make their own medical choices during COVID. But right now, they're falling back on that. They're pulling back away from that and saying, "No, we do want big government deciding medical decisions for people."
Right,
And
that's why I'm
it's
saying it doesn't track, like
exactly, exactly. So, and that that's one of those areas that I'm really glad that I'm a libertarian, because I know I can be consistent on these issues.
Yeah.
And yes, there are gray areas in libertarianism. Don't get me wrong, but like, we are far more consistent on so many issues, just because we can say no, as long as it's not harming someone else, it's okay, or at least
Well, and I
it shouldn't be illegal.
right. I think it's important that we are always able to accept that there's nuance and it's not black and white, because I think that's something that and that's probably just politics in general in the media, right? It's always black and white. But like,
Right.
what was that Twitter thread I just read the other day? Everyone it was a teenager. It was that meme of the trans teen, and it was like a teenager looking individual with their parents and their doctor and their whatever, and they're like, I consent. And then the elephant
Right.
is like, I don't.
That was yeah.
Daniels.
Yeah, Daniel, he's on our social media team for the CLC of Texas. That's a great meme, because it shows, hey, the kid asking for care, the parents consenting, the doctor consenting, the therapist consenting, but the government not consenting, right? And that really does boil down the whole issue. If all of the people who are taking care of this child study the issue, looked into the issue, and make a decision, we kind of have to allow that. That's parental rights. That's medical autonomy.
Yeah.
Now, now that's not to say that there isn't a level at which it becomes abuse, but for the vast majority of cases, that's not simply not the case. And you have medical abuse in non-transgender issues. There are plenty of
Right.
times where a parent has made up symptoms because they want to feel sympathy from other parents, right? So they've made up symptoms and taken their child to the doctor and had unnecessary medical care.
Yeah,
And those cases
Munchausen.
should be prosecuted. And if
Mhm.
that happens for a transgender medical case, that should be prosecuted as well.
Yeah, and
Um,
CPS exists whether you like it or not. It currently exists, and it exists for a reason. So, like, I can't imagine that CPS, the doctor, the therapist, and the parents are all on the same page about this if it's controversial at all, right? If this kid maybe shouldn't be having it, one of those people is gonna say no.
right, right. And I'm all for studying this issue and coming up with a clear, making sure, I don't know if you want to have both parents have to sign off on it, or something along those lines. Like, these are these are kids. We have to take care. We have to protect them in some ways, but there's
Yeah.
a way to do that without harming them. I mean, we see the kids with the transgender kids, their suicide rates are through the roof, and so yes, sometimes there are bad effects from some of these surgeries, but suicide has a really bad effect too.
Mhm.
So there's a balancing act here that we have to figure out how to protect kids, getting government in the middle of that decision really isn't it. You can set a few boundaries, but getting the government in the middle of that decision making is not going to make the issue better.
Yeah. I mean, it's dramatic, but would you rather have your child be a different gender or be dead? Like, you have to think about that. I don't
Yeah, yeah, and
but
the science isn't really completely settled on this issue too, and so we
no.
have to look at the information that's out there, and it's all over the place. Like, I've seen studies
Mhm.
on both sides going both ways. And so we have to understand that this is how medicine works. This is how they determine the best course of actions. We didn't suddenly stop doing lobotomies because they were banned. We stopped doing lobotomies because they weren't medically necessary when we realized that. So we have to understand that this is a process of medicine. To understand we have to try these things out to save these kids, because these kids are high risk of a lot of issues.
Now, an
Um,
interesting fact about all of those, like, lobotomies and shock therapies is they've actually refined them to where
right,
people can get a shock therapy that's, like, right in the spot of the brain that they need it to help them, and so that fucking blows my mind because, like, they were
right.
torturing people, they really were
Oh yeah,
hurting people, but,
oh
like,
yeah,
we got to the point where, like, maybe we can precisely do this, like,
right.
that's pretty cool, and originally it wasn't consensual, but more now in the current, it's much more consensual for their subjects, and that's great.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I want is for government. Like, look at what government has done with the war on drugs. Like, a study of MDMA with PTSD treatments, right? Like like how bad has it been when government got in the way and said no, nobody can do any of these drugs. Well, scientists can't study the drugs anymore. They can't study the effects on the mental health of soldiers anymore.
Yeah,
And so we've, I like this, we talk about suicide rates for trans kids. We talk about the suicide rates for veterans. It's insane. It's insanely high.
yeah.
So government getting in the way of these medical decisions is just not gonna. It's not gonna save. It's not gonna help people. It's
Oh,
just.
yeah.
It's just not.
As a military Air Force veteran, I'm a huge advocate for using marijuana for your pain emotionally and physically because that's how I function. Like I told you earlier, like I have really bad nausea sometimes, and I was sick last week, and I was a little sick this week, so I had my tea and I've been drinking it. I guess I didn't tell you I was sick. I just told you about the tea because I spilled it. But I use marijuana so that I can eat. Like, I got home from work today after vomiting, I smoked marijuana, and I was finally able to eat some chicken soup. Like, that's ridiculous that some people can't do that.
Yeah. Well, I had a friend of mine. I worked with someone who she got cancer. I believe when she was 16. She got cancer, brain cancer, and they had to operate her. She had to go through chemotherapy and all these things. And she had to. She took CBD pills. I forget exactly I believe it was pills, but she took these pills for exactly that reason. They gave her appetite back,
Yeah,
and she was a minor at the time. So yes, we can allow dangerous things because they end up with a better result, right?
yeah,
So we have to let the medical doctors treat their patients as they see fit within a basic boundary, right?
yeah. Maybe
Because
don't
there are
tell
malicious
cancer
doctors.
patients to go, binge drinking, but
Right.
marijuana
Right.
is
Exactly.
fairly safe.
Exactly. So
CBD even,
now
yeah.
you mentioned at the very beginning, like we want to hear from people talking about like what liberty organizations out there should we talk to? Should we bring in, let them share? The one thing that I'd love to have Dan Johnson from the Institute for Community Solutions, where they actually go
Mm,
and study where a charity has taken over an aspect of what government had been doing in the past, and
oh,
how it
love
has
it.
improved things. So that's somebody we'd have on. So if anybody has any organizations like that we could touch on and talk to and listen to the story and figure out how we can promote them, let us know, please. Danielle at lpclc.org is your email, right?
Danielle.s at
Oh,
lpclc.org.
Danielle.s at
Yeah,
lpclc.org. Yeah,
you
just email
made it.
Danielle and get that out to her. I'll put that in the description as
Cool.
well. Um,
But other examples are fire. I don't what is that? Freedom? Oh, they changed it
they
recently,
did
so now
just
I
change
don't
the
know
name.
it.
Freedom. Yeah, I'd have to look it up, but yes, that's a great
Um,
organization. They do a lot of good work. Speaking of them, you were mentioning to me Huskies for
mhm.
Liberty, because they're in Washington State. Is it Washington State?
Yep, they're the local University of Washington chapter of Students for Liberty.
And they have their campus is the worst rated for free speech in the country, right? So they've had to fight
Yeah,
back a lot against a lot of these infringements on their speech. So we need to have somebody on from them for sure to kind of talk about that and figure out what's going on there, because I can't imagine like how do you become the worst for free speech on a university? To me, a university should be the embodiment of free speech, of free expression. Of like that's my experience. I went to for a couple of years I went
mhm,
to a community college, and that was my experience, was talking with other people from completely
yeah,
different backgrounds, from immigrant kids, from rich kids, like all these different backgrounds. We talk and we throw things out there, and it was a very free flowing of ideas. And to me, that was the embodiment of my college experience. So before I dropped out,
mhm.
but that was the embodiment, and I can't imagine taking that away from other students.
That might be the difference between a community college and a university, though, because I also recall my community college being much more lax. Everyone was more chill. It didn't really matter, like, if you
Right.
disagreed, because we're all still young adults figuring ourselves out. But, like, I went to the University of Nebraska, Omaha, for social work. So I had the full university experience there. And it was a little bit more like you had to kind of watch what you were saying because, you know, you don't necessarily want to be fighting with your instructor, but you also don't want to like be having debates in the middle of the classroom because they didn't
Right.
describe what libertarianism means correctly. And now you're the one that's going on a rant telling everyone what it means.
That's
That was
funny.
me.
That's really interesting because yeah, no, I had two professors specifically that I remember that they openly encouraged my English professor and my philosophy professor, and I took them back to back semesters because I enjoyed them so much. Is they actively encourage people to talk about these issues, and they
Yeah.
actively encourage their students to debate these issues and talk about them and figure out what they think. And I really appreciate that mindset of not the professor's not pushing their mindset on people, but saying, figure out your mindset, rationalize your own
Mhm.
mindset, figure out why you believe what you believe. And I think that that's really important for young people to figure out.
Yeah.
I yeah.
With my masters, it was really about training you to be a good social worker, and so it really was, you know, fitting you into that box, which again, it's so the big thing in social work is, your client is the expert in their own life,
Mm.
and it's still like you see CPS doing all of these things. Did you see the news story? And I don't remember what state it was. The woman, I believe they're a BIPOC family, and they were using a midwife for their infant
Yes.
services. Yeah, so CPS called, or the doctor called CPS on them because they didn't use the hospital for their jaundice care. They used the midwife. And so the hospital, I guess, didn't trust that they were getting proper services, called CPS, removed the kid, um, and she got the kid back today,
Oh, good.
finally.
Oh,
Yeah.
I can't imagine. I have 3 kids. I can't imagine having a child taken away.
But yeah, these people of color, I don't want to say it like that, but these folks, like they don't trust doctors and chose a
Let's be
midwife
honest though.
for a reason.
Would a white parents have their baby taken away for that?
Not
Like,
not for going to a
not
midwife,
very, not.
no. You're
Yeah,
just hippie and crunchy if you're a white
right.
person going to a midwife.
Yeah.
I don't
No, yeah, that's pretty awful. I think it goes back to the parental rights and argument that we were talking about before. Is like parents have the right to make these medical decisions,
yeah,
and yes, there are lines, right? But there need to be a large uh, area that parents can operate in to make the best decisions for their kids. Because guess what? Government doesn't know what's best for your kids. Like
yeah,
technically, according to the statistics, yes, every child should be vaccinated with basically everything. But I
mhm,
don't think we should be using government to enforce it. But according to the statistics, yes, jab everyone as much as possible. But that's not what we should do, right? So we can't just say, well, statistics say this, statistics say that. Um, these decisions do need to be left up to the parents.
yeah.
So
Ugh.
because yeah, we could be wrong. Like there could be one
Yeah,
vaccine that is bad, and parents, are able, choose not to have their child vaccinated. So we have to, I don't know, we have to let parents make the decisions as
yeah,
much as we can.
especially if you're, like, immunocompromised or whatever. I mean, there are even health decisions in the family where, like, maybe you don't wanna be vaccinated because someone else that might be a problem. Actually, I don't know. The vaccine shedding people really confused me about vaccines because that's not a thing, but,
The
like,
vaccine, what
shedding, right? Like,
shedding?
so a lot of
I'm not sure.
right wing
I don't know
a
what you
lot of
mean.
conservative folks were saying that they couldn't have vaccinated people in their homes because the vaccine would shed onto them and they
Oh
would get
God.
it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's like I'm sure there's a kernel of truth in there somewhere where like some vaccine somehow affects other people, but like I don't know what it is. So I
I
don't want
didn't
to
know this was a
legislate it.
thing, and I didn't know it
Yeah.
had a name, and I am most disappointed, and I am so
Mhm.
disappointed in humanity right now.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's wild. I have not heard that. That is pretty insane.
Yeah.
Thankfully my family was pretty relaxed about COVID, and nobody really was panicky about it.
Yeah.
Um My parents had it very early on, and we did
Mm,
stay. Obviously, we stayed away during that.
mhm.
But my parents had it really early on, so I didn't really worry that much about them. I didn't really say, "Hey, you need to go get vaccinated," because my parents did not. My wife's parents, everyone was like, "Come on, let's get vaccinated. It's going to be okay." And they're like, "Okay," because they were around their parents, my wife's grandparents, who were in their
Mhm.
80s, and at that point, you're like, you need to protect them, because in little rural Missouri, nobody's everyone's still going to church. Nobody's really
Oh, yeah.
stopped doing what they're doing. So we encourage them to get vaccinated, just because, for one thing, it's protect them and also protect my wife's grandparents. But nobody
Yeah.
really. I had a few in-laws that didn't really get out and do anything for a long time. But my side of the family, most family took it pretty well. Nobody really panicked too much, so that was good.
Yeah, mine were chill. They were all over the place on vaccines, but
Nobody broke up the family over it.
no, no, my dad and my stepmom had a real big argument because my
Oh,
stepmom wanted to visit her mom in an assisted living facility because that's where she lives. It was COVID. She wanted to see her mom. So she got vaccinated, and my dad and my whole dad's family was so mad. Meanwhile, my grandma was in an assisted living facility which required vaccines. And what did my family do? They snuck in the back door.
oh no.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Oh,
got COVID from the funeral, so
oh no.
but my partner took care of me. He told me that if I didn't get vaccinated and I got really bad COVID, he wasn't gonna deal with me because I didn't do everything I could to make sure that I wouldn't get super sick. And I was like, "Okay, fair enough. I only have you, so I guess we can both get vaccinated and we'll take care of each other."
That's funny. I got vaccinated. I never got it. There were a couple times I thought I had it. Took a test, didn't have it. So I who knows?
Nice.
Maybe I'm just one of those people who just never had it. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
glad that's all behind us, though, because that was, oh Lord, that was an annoying several years for
yeah.
sure.
Mhm. I might
So
still wear a mask on an airplane, though. They're still pretty gross having people that close to you, but we'll see.
yeah, I do think one good thing is that people are a little bit more like, if you're sick, just wear a mask. Like, it's okay. Like, you're
Yeah.
fine. I don't think we should be like Asia, where everyone wears a mask all the time. That's just
Mm-mm.
annoying. But I do think if you got the sniffles or something, may as well put a mask on, and who cares?
Yeah, support that.
Exactly. As long as it's personal choices.
Right.
That's what we support, right?
Mhm. Uh,
You're involved a bit with Spike. You are the power.
mhm. Yeah.
Can you kind of run down what they kind of do and what they're focused on?
Right now, we're building our network of activists to just work on single issue coalitions, really small direct action projects. The biggest project that we've done was buying a church some big storage containers. We crowdfunded. So people all across the country were able to donate to this project. They bought the storage containers and now they're using them to store things so they have more room in the building to serve people food for their soup kitchen.
Okay,
Um, so that's
nice.
the kind of projects we're working on is, Spike, he likes to go in and talk to people and be like, what's the one problem that you're having? And so we were going to work on that lady's CPS case, but she got the kit back. So instead, we're connecting with the agency that helped her so that we can help other people that potentially the agency because they're a little bit closer to the government so they have a little bit more rules but maybe we can help do some things that they can't. Um, I'm going to go to a project this weekend. It's called an air fair. The South Seattle folks are that's a lower income area, and so I'm going to be over there just giving out donated fans and air filters and just random things like that because we have all the fires up here. California burns every summer, and we get all the smoke. And so this is like an awareness campaign by a nonprofit to make sure that everybody is aware of, what they need to take care of their asthma because it's like becoming a thing now
Interesting.
because
I
of
had no
smoke.
idea. When I was a kid,
Yeah.
we had there was I grew up in Texas, and my Mexico had a massive forest fire, and we had the smoke roll over
Oh,
us from that across the Gulf. That's a long ass
man,
way, but
yeah.
that was pretty wild. It was all gray for a while.
Mhm.
Pretty weird. It wasn't like, it looked like clouds, but you knew it, like, it just was a little off. Like, you could tell it wasn't normal
Mhm.
clouds. So interesting. I had no idea. I never thought about
Yeah.
where the smoke goes, I guess.
Yeah. I didn't either.
payback for all the ash from Mount St. Helens, right?
Oh, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I'm from California, so I grew up with all the fires every year. I'm like, this is normal. And then I come up here and people are freaking out. They're like not leaving their houses. And I'm like, you guys, we walked around like every single school year all summer while the fires were burning. No one cared about masks. Like, I never even considered it. I have asthma and I never protected myself against smoke before. And then I move up here and they're like, oh, gotta wear a mask. And I'm like, oh, actually, I might.
Hmm.
I probably need
Interesting.
it. Thank you.
Interesting.
Huh.
Yeah, I never thought about it.
Yeah. Huh.
That's an interesting
KN95,
thing,
of course, or a respirator, but yeah.
right? Well, I'll tell you who we can blame for those fires.
Hmm.
Bad forest management.
Oh, yeah.
That's
And
where
Gavin
we can
somehow.
blame government for, right? Oh my goodness. If you're doing on that rabbit hole, it's quite interesting because one of the, it's a lot of forests have a natural tendency, like it is a good
Mhm.
thing for forests to have forest fires. But the problem is when you don't allow forest fires, when you put them out,
Mhm.
the underbrush grows and grows and grows and grows. And so what happens is then once it does actually start a fire, it gets so hot because you have so much undergrowth to burn and so much fuel for the fire because the trees don't burn until it gets really, really hot.
Mhm.
That it does that underbrush makes it hot enough. If the underbrush is low and not that high, what will happen is the fire will burn through without really damaging the trees, and the trees will pop back. Everything grows back. Everything's fine. So you have places like British Columbia where you actually can they actually set forest fires and actually
Mhm.
have it burn through and clear out the underbrush regularly, and that enables the trees to actually grow faster and better, and it actually protects the forest.
Yeah.
But in America, we've completely messed up our forests here. So our forest management. I've often wished. Well, it's federally managed most of the time, but I think that a lot of that federal land should just be handed over to the states and let the states kind of experiment with how they want to manage that stuff.
Yeah, I've seen some things from different states where they're putting out guidelines for how people can like manicure their lawns to keep fire from their homes.
Hmm,
Because, you don't want plants growing directly on your home. You need, a foot of gravel so that it doesn't hop or
makes
whatever.
sense.
And so I think that that would be so much more helpful if you're right, if it was state by state, because they know what they need to do to protect themselves better than the federal government.
Yeah, exactly. I've One of the things everybody's like, well, we need to protect national parks, and I love national parks.
I
You go
do
camping, I
too.
know that too. So I love national parks. I love going out to the parks. But I always tell people the example of, well, if we privatize the national parks, or if we did anything with the national parks, it would ruin the beauty. If you go to Niagara Falls in New York, and you look at the American side and you look at the Canadian side. The Canadian side is all built up, massive skyscrapers looking down on the falls, and then the U.S. is just this flat, like observation tower. And it's like, how much better is the Canadian side because they've
Yeah.
let people just build what the market demanded. They've let the people, build these skyscrapers to look down on this, and on the American side, it's kind of in a neighborhood, and you're just
It's
kind of
very
there, and that's it. And it's like,
it's very
man, if
well.
you let people develop the area. It doesn't harm the view. In fact, it's really cool to see this waterfall and these skyscrapers right behind it.
Yeah. It's very Teddy
Uh,
Roosevelt still, all the
yes.
nature is still there. My big idea, though, I really want it to take off for our national parks is we need to just give them back to the tribes. They have all this shit land right now. No one wants to live there. Just give them the national parks. They'll be better stewards than we are. And
That
they can
I like
charge
that
us. I'll
idea.
pay.
Yeah, the federal government shouldn't have any business in it.
Mm-mm.
If anything, give it to the states. But I like that idea. I think that that's a good idea because I think that their heritage is in the land. I don't know
Yeah.
how you. It's kind of a weird. Humans kind of have a weird way of bonding with the land, like of where
Mhm.
they're from. We have this, it's like innate in us for some reason. We have this the kind of identity with where we're born. And I think Americans less so just because of kind of our
Yeah.
history of immigration and all of that. But I think that would, yeah, I like that. I like that idea of just giving it back to because I do think that they would take care of it, and we might get some casinos at the national parks. So
Oh,
there you
yeah.
go.
Man,
uh,
that still boggles my mind, the whole casino thing, but that's
yeah.
different.
Oh yeah, no, and well, speaking of casinos and government interference, Oklahoma and Louisiana, I believe this is correct. They spent almost $250 million in Texas politics to keep gambling illegal.
In
Because
Texas?
in Louisiana and Oklahoma, it's legal. Well, in Oklahoma, it's legal at the reservation, but that's 45 minute or an hour drive north of Dallas. So you got Shreveport on this side. So they want to keep Texas illegal in Texas, so that they get all the proceeds from it, right?
Yep.
So they literally spend. I think last I remember hearing, it was like $250 million a year. Like, it is a
Ugh,
massive amount of money pouring into Texas politics to make sure that gambling stays illegal. Talk
God.
about cronyism, right? Just right there. That's about as crony as it gets.
Yeah.
So
I was
funny.
listening to a podcast about the lottery. Don't do the lottery. Apparently, actually, less people are doing the lottery now, so you might be more likely because it's not the American dream to win the lottery anymore. Apparently, so
Oh,
the
really?
ticket
Well,
sales are
what is the
down.
American
Yeah,
dream then?
I I I thought it was to sue someone and get a lot of money, but apparently
Oh,
that's not it either. Oh no.
that's funny. Speaking of dreams, I have like one of my dreams is to go to space. Like, that is a dream of mine. It's so funny. I actually took my daughter out. We had a little dinner. We took her to Chick-fil-A, and we were talking. And she wants to be an engineer, which I think is pretty freaking
Mm,
awesome for a 9-year-old girl. But um, we were talking about going to space and all this. And that's one of my, like, I would love to go to space. Like, like someday I'm just gonna hand over my credit card and like buy me a ticket to space. I don't give a shit. Like, what, just pay whatever it takes, right? Obviously, I don't think it's quite cheap enough for me to afford it yet. But someday I'm just gonna max out a credit card and go to space. But so SpaceX launched their thing and it blew up. What I love about this is that we live in a day and age where that's not a big deal.
yeah,
Like,
I
it's
didn't even
so
hear about it.
awesome that we live in a day and age that, okay, a spaceship blew up. Nobody was on it, so obviously if somebody had been on it, it would have been a story. But okay,
It's great that we can do them unmanned like that, like,
yeah,
and we're gonna get. I mean, well, this one blew up, but like,
right.
potentially we'll get the same amount of data as the manned ones. But
Well, that's just it. I think I love their kind of their perception on this, and I think that this applies to a lot of things. Right? They learn more from those failures than they do from the successes, and that's true in a lot of things in life.
yeah,
If something's easy for you, if you just do something right the first time, you don't really learn from it. And so when you make mistakes, you have to just think of it as a way to not do it. A
that's
thousand ways
actually
to, yeah,
yeah.
exactly, a thousand ways to not build a light bulb, right? Not create the
Mhm.
light bulb.
That's like
So I think that,
a learning strategy even actually is like to you watch someone do it and then you do it, with their help so that you still do it wrong, but they help you, and then you
mhm,
can do it by yourself better the 3rd time because you already have that experience of messing up and, like, troubleshooting in your brain. It's
right,
super
right,
interesting.
yeah. No, I love it. I love that there's spaceships, just rocket ships launching off to space all the time, and we don't even think about it, don't even notice it. It's just become a standard thing, which is pretty awesome. Like, you always look at those old advertisements of from like 1900, where they imagine what 2000 the year 2000 was going to look like, and there's flying carriages or whatever the heck it is, flying cars, flying whatever,
Not quite
and
there.
what's really interesting is that all of the things that they were predicting for were solving the issues of their day, right? So all
Mhm.
of the things the issues of their day was they had really bad transportation, right? It was really expensive to go from one
Okay.
place to the other. So that's what they were imagining the future was like. Well, we've solved that. Our transportation costs around the globe, we could right now for $1,000 fly basically anywhere in the world, which
Yeah.
is pretty amazing. So I think that we solved the problem that they wanted to solve. We just did it in a different way. We did,
Yeah.
flying cars really are not very efficient. But I love that. I love that. That's and when we look at from 100 years from now, it would be really interesting to see. Okay, well, what problems do people see? And I think that um, it's not that, like, how do those cartoons of the flying cars and everything. How do you have a cartoon of like curing cancer or stuff like that? So I think that that's where we're going to be putting a lot of our effort into, and I hope so. And I think that, like, what things like Mark Cuban, he started up his pharmaceutical company where it's a flat fee or a percentage fee for every medicine. So there's no markup. There's a markup that's just a flat markup, and they sell the medicine to you. And I think that's a great model. I think
Yeah.
it's a great free market model that I think we could apply to a lot of areas where it's people in need. There's a demand for it. If you can figure out how to provide for it, you can help a lot of people.
Yeah. That's what we're doing with You Are the Power, non-governmental solutions, so
That's Yeah. I think that we can imagine a libertarian world, but we have to get there. We actually have to figure out how to convince people to get them off the government teat, right?
Yep.
to get off that government teat. We have to show it, tell them, hey, listen, this is how we can do it. These are the ways we can solve these
Mhm.
problems, because people see poverty, people see hunger, people see uh, uh, medical debt. They see all these issues, and they're right. They do need to be solved. But the problem is they're wrong in how they solve them. They're not
Mhm.
wrong that these are problems. They're wrong in the way that they're solving them and looking to government to solve these issues. So we have to tell people, hey, listen, there's a better way. There's a better way. It's more efficient. It doesn't harm people, and it's gonna help people a lot more than getting government in the way.
And it's always cheaper.
Yes, yes, it very very much so. Um, yeah, it was what tax day was last Tuesday, and
Mm.
that was also tax freedom day, which I think it's ironic that it kind of lined up. Is that that's the day that you stop working for the government. And the average American stops working for the government 4 months or 3 months, 3.5 months into the year is when you stop. All your most of your money that you've earned to that point is going to end up going to the government.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's one way to look at it. That up to this point in the year, you've just been working for the government, not yourself, which is a pretty
Mm.
pretty annoying thought.
My favorite thing about working a tipping job is I get to talk about taxes all the time because people ask me, "Can I tip on my card?" And I'm like, "Yeah, but I prefer cash." And they're like, "Oh, yeah." And I'm like, "Yeah, taxes." And they're like, "Yeah, I don't know why they tax your tips, blah blah blah." And I'm like, "I don't really like income tax, like in general." So,
Right. Shouldn't tax any of the anything, tips or
yeah.
income.
And to be quite honest, like that is a very favorable lefty concept is no income tax. You just can't say it in a stupid way like taxation is theft and then talk about how every tax is stealing from you. But income tax is a very, very good issue to connect on.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's like workers' wages, right? I mean, we're talking about minimum wage, and
Oh
then the
yeah.
government's gonna take some of that. Like, what's the point of a minimum wage if you have to give some to the government in the first place? So,
Right. Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
mm,
I like it. Yeah, if we want to fix the minimum wage, get rid of the income tax.
yeah, I mean, that's
Improve
the
the
first
minimum
step.
wage.
Yeah.
Oh man. The other story that I saw in the news was it's I can't believe we're still at this 3.5 years later, but the election fraud stories. We've had two big stories. Dominion won three-quarters of $1 billion from Fox News, and then Mike Lindell, the private what's the private it was a not a litigator, a what is the term for it? Anyways,
Is it
basically he was
petitioner?
told
Is
that
that
say what?
petitioner?
No, let me
No.
see here. I had it up here for a
Def
second.
he was the ju he yeah.
Yeah, so basically, Mike Lindell said, I'll pay you $5 million if you can prove me wrong. Well, somebody did prove him wrong, an arbitrator. That's it. The arbitrator said, and then the contract had said that it had to go to. I was going to go through private arbitration. And the arbiter said, yes, you have to pay that $5 million because you were proven wrong on this issue. And apparently the guy convinced the arbitration panel that in fact he proved Mike Lindell wrong, which I think is kind of funny. But we've had two major stories that were 3.5 years ago. People were talking about Dominion, people were talking about election fraud, and it's just kind of fizzled out because there really just wasn't any evidence there. And especially like the fact that the reason that Fox News, people are going to say, well, big government's in on it with Dominion. They're just trying to cover up the fraud by settling. By making Fox News pay Dominion. Well, hang on a second. Fox News, in their own text messages to each other, these hosts, Tucker Carlson, all the other hosts on there, all knew that it was a scam. All knew that Dominion was not committing fraud. They all admitted it in their private communications, but on air in front of people, they openly lied about it and excuse me, perpetuated this story of that Dominion was fraudulent. and and
Ugh,
so that it's not a government plot. When these people know that they're lying to your face, stop believing them. Turn them off. They admit you can see their private text that showed that they didn't believe what they were telling you. And that's my
yeah.
frustration is we can talk about mainstream media. The Fox News is mainstream media. Sorry, folks.
Yeah. It's really funny because I really don't get a lot of news except for what's, like, shared through Discord or what I, like, see on Reddit every once in a while, but I don't even, like, look at the homepage because it's always drama. Um, I forgot what I was going with this.
Well, I rarely get news from I rarely go to a news website anymore. I
Yeah.
pretty much kind of absorb it from what people are tweeting about, talking about, and again, Discord. And by the way, we have a CLC Discord. We have great debates, talking, the great
Yeah.
conversations in there. Feel free to join it. I'll put that link in the bottom. But our website also has a link to all of our social media and our Discord. So it's lpclc.org. That'll be in the description. But yeah, I don't really go to
Yeah.
news sites anymore. I basically kind of absorb it by what's being talked about
Mhm.
on social media. It's and I follow some people that I really think I trust their perspective on things. I think that that's important, is to make
Mhm.
sure you have not only people you can trust with different perspectives, but also people who um, have different perspectives. So that when you have a news story come out, you can get a couple different
Mhm.
perspectives and kind of find the truth in there somewhere as best you can.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: you don't have to have an opinion on everything. Like, you can read a news story, go, I don't
Hmm.
know that I agree with what they're saying. I don't know that I disagree with what they're saying, but it's a piece of information.
Yeah. That's definitely a thing that people need to work on in politics is emotional regulation just in general. Like it's just because you don't like it doesn't mean you need to get mad about it. Like you can just like take it, be upset and let it go.
Right.
It'll be
Yeah, and you
okay.
don't need to know. You don't always need to know, like, some of these sources, like the Nord Stream attack,
Mhm.
where it turns out that there were a lot of Russian ships in the area right before the Nord Stream pipeline. And this was after everybody said, well, it's the US federal government, or it's Ukraine, or it's whoever.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's better just to let the data roll in, let the information roll in, and before you try to make an opinion on it, because usually more data, more information is better. Sometimes
Yeah.
more information muddies the water.
Mhm.
But in this case, in most cases, I think sometimes it's better just to wait for more information, not jump right off the cup. I think that a lot of people, like we were
Mhm.
just talking about election fraud, the same thing, where people saw these spikes in the voting counts, and well, it turns out that it was actually just because there were laws passed by Republicans that said you couldn't count the votes as they came in. You had to count the votes after election day. So obviously
Mhm.
there's going to be massive spikes because they can't count them before election day.
Yeah. Uh, I
Sorry,
listened to a whole
I'm
podcast.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Maybe you need some tea.
Yeah.
I listened to a whole podcast about the Republicans who watched the polls over the last election. Like they would sit in their cars, like looking at people. Like these are the people who caught that woman with the box of votes, like that Trump was talking about in Georgia. Like and it's crazy how they really think that what they're doing is like a very valuable service for the American public. Like sitting in a parking lot watching people go vote. And I don't know what they think they're gonna see, but
Well, I mean, I'm all for opening up more transparency in our election process, but our election process is actually very transparent. You
yeah.
can go be an election judge and be
Yeah.
involved in the process and see the votes as they go through and figure, like, you can go do that. Anyone can go do that.
These were
That,
the Republicans, like the actual Republican Party members, and they did not do that. That
yeah,
was not in their plan.
like, you can get involved in the actual process and actually see the thing, see how the sausage is made, right? Uh,
Yeah. And that's something you can do in pretty much any state, right? It's you can observe the vote count of the ballots. I know in Washington we do we're like all mail-in votes. So everyone gets a paper ballot unless you can't. And so yeah, you can go and stand in that room and watch them tear open the envelopes and pull out the security envelope and separate the things and do all that. If you really think there's fraud happening, like I would encourage you to go watch.
yeah, I mean, you can, it probably is different by state, but by precinct. And here in Texas, you can go be an election judge at pretty much any precinct. I think you have to be living in the, maybe you have to live in the
Mhm.
precinct, or you can just go be friends with and watch the poll, be a poll watcher. There's plenty of ways you can go and actually watch how things are being
Yeah.
done, keep an
Yeah,
eye on it.
we have two very friendly people that stand at the drop box and help you make sure that your thing got in the box and you got your sticker and everything. And that seems like a very good job for people who are worried about
Yeah,
voter interference.
absolutely.
But our friend of the show, Layla Bush, she has observed the election, the vote counts in Washington in some capacity. I don't know that she did like the statewide ones, but she's definitely been part of that process. She's a good person to talk to about ballot access, at least.
Yeah,
Um,
she's on the ballot access committee for OP
yeah,
National. So no, that's really good. I think that's really important. I mean, obviously, ballot access is very important for us. So I'm really
yeah.
glad that she's doing that. 'Cause she's a valuable asset there.
Oh, yeah. She was integral in getting Jo Jorgensen on the ballot in Washington. She probably won't accept that, but
Nice.
she basically ran it. She told everyone what to do.
There you go. She would downplay it. I know her.
Yeah, of course. But
Great.
yeah. I don't know. I feel like that's all I've got.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you were?
Yeah, not particularly. Yeah, follow us on social medias. Like I said, our website has all of that listed out, lpclc.org.
Yep.
Check us out there. But yeah, it'd
Email
be
us.
fun. Yeah, email Danielle with thoughts and ideas about guests. We've got a bunch on a list, but we figured this would be a good night to kind of just uh, let everybody get to know us and have a
Yeah.
conversation about what's up in the world and give a different test because I think we've always had a guest up to this point.
Mhm.
We most have a guest most evenings, but yeah, it's fun to just kind of have a chat. It's a little different.
Yeah. And maybe we could have like an episode where people like ask questions. If you guys wanted to like ask us questions in the email or send me articles even, we could
I
be
like that. We could also
entertaining.
do a live stream even. Yeah, but I
Yeah.
like that. I like the idea of some people emailing us questions or topics to talk about. If they have a question about a specific issue that they want a libertarian perspective on, that'd be really fun.
And honestly, like something that I think would be really cool too is if you guys would send us your like upcoming events or like volunteer things. If you want other folks to come, like I'll mention it on the podcast if it's, classically liberally related. Um,
Yeah.
seems like a good avenue for, connecting people. That's what we're here for.
Oh,
So,
one thing I did forget is we're going to have the CLC general meeting on June
mm,
22nd, if I remember correctly. If you go to our website or blog, I'll have the full announcement there. But we're going to be electing a couple people to our to our board and have a few bylaw election, platform elections for the CLC. We do this every year, kind of just to elect leaders to the CLC. So just putting that out there since tried to mention it everywhere else, but as I remember.
and that's in the Discord.
Yeah, that'll be in the Discord.
Cool. All right. Well, it's been great chatting with you, Jonathan. I guess I'll see you next week, huh?
Sounds good. See you guys.
See ya.